This week on Sober Strength, we're talking about workaholism or work addiction. I'm joined by my great friend and co-host Justin Mazars. We're going to talk about the culture, what workaholism is, the science, and most importantly, if you are a workaholic, what can you do about it? Buckle up, let's go deep. All right, welcome to Sober Strength, powered by Or Health. I am reunited, and it feels so good with my great pal, Justin Mazars. What's up, Justin?
What's going on, man? So good to be back. Excited for another amazing episode and opportunity just to talk with your handsome face, honestly.
I know. And I appreciate, if anyone is watching, not listening, before we jumped on the show, I noticed that Justin had holes in his shirt. And I said, thanks for coming and bringing your A game with the
I
holes in
bring
your
only
shirt.
the best.
And he changed. And now he looks like he's wearing a fitted black t-shirt and he looks amazing.
That's right. My church attire. You get me as I am. All right, Justin.
I love it.
That's how I come to the table.
All right, man. Well, let's bring it into the topic at hand here: work addiction.
Yes.
And people call that workaholism. It's an actual term. I'm going to start by I'm going to define it. And I know both you and I have a deep connection to this issue. We both experienced and may even be currently still experiencing what I'll call symptoms of workaholism. But let's start with the definition. So according to the DSM-5, and if you're wondering, yes, that is the same exact book that actual therapists and scientists use to diagnose other mental health conditions, right? The DSM-5. So according to DSM-5, workaholism defined as, quote, an obsessive compulsive personality trait characterized by excessive devotion to work and productivity, and here's key, to the exclusion of leisure activities and relationships. Words jumped out to me: obsessive compulsive, which means it's literally a compulsive behavior. We're not even thinking about it. We're just doing it. And then excessive devotion. It's good to be devoted to work, but when it becomes excessive and compulsive, that's when an issue, and especially when it's at the detriment of your mental health and your relationships. So yeah, man, why don't I'll start with you. Why don't you just respond to that definition and we'll take it where it goes.
So like the obsessive compulsive part of it, like I get that, man. Like, and I have been there, and I know we'll get into it, but you want to be good at everything that you do. And, I know you're similar with me, this like type of person, but when I first started and even going back years after that, like, it was like, okay, all I want to do is climb that ladder, and I'm not going to stop until I have that C in front of my title. And it was like, whatever gets in my way, I'm either going to run over or find my way around. And when you're doing that and you have your blinders on, it's typically like that's all we see. And that can be work too. And that comes at the cost of other things that you value. And that's unfortunately usually your family and other things that you love that you're not putting on the back seat because you feel like you need to be employee of the month.
And to the, at the exclusion of relationships. I remember when we started going to this pre-K and we have to drive 10 minutes up the road to bring my daughter. And I remember when I committed to that, I was like, this is amazing. I'll have 10 minutes every single morning, Monday through Thursday, to just have quality time with my daughter. And I remember at first it was amazing. I'd look at her eyes in the mirror and we would just talk about whatever is on like a 5-year-old's mind. It really didn't matter. And it was beautiful. And then within a year, I can remember I was taking a work call. I remember I got in the car, I loaded up. She was probably like, I get to spend time with daddy. And I remember like, hey, sweetheart, like, I'm just going to call a friend really quick. And then for the entire ride, I just took a work call. And it wasn't urgent. I could have taken it 15 minutes later, but I had anxiety about that topic. And I can remember on the call, I almost forgot she was in the car. And I remember I looked in the mirror and she was just sitting there, just like kind of waiting, probably taking in the conversation. But, as a dad, and I'm sure anyone listening as a parent can relate to this, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why did I sacrifice this beautiful 10-minute ritual? Why am I confusing my daughter? And what is she taking away from this fact that, well, I'm with daddy and he's just not interested, And in that moment, and there was a series of moments that led to me just quitting my career. But I just remember that sometimes life just grabs you and you're like, hey, man, this is not who you are.
No, it's not. And, there's I don't know if it's a quote or a saying, but like anybody on their deathbed, you ask them one of their biggest regrets in life, no one's going to say, I wish I worked more, and like, we're doing all this. And when I say we, I think I can speak for myself and you in this situation being husbands and fathers, but like, we work our asses off and like we grind and we try and do all these things for the betterment of our family, right? Like we want to set up the futures to be as amazing as possible for them to flourish health wise, financial wise, education wise, socially, like just trying to literally lay the foundation for our kids. But while we're doing that, we're not even there to show up for them now because we're so busy with work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and that message that
Right.
they're getting is daddy's choosing work over me right now, or
Yep.
daddy's on his phone when I have off school and I know he's working, but I just want to hug right now. You
Yeah.
know, like I get emotional about it because I'm guilty of it, man. Like we all are.
Yeah.
And we're trying so hard to prepare for the future that we're losing sight of the present and how beautiful it is, man.
Yeah.
Um,
And fleeting. Yeah.
so fleeting. And that's the part that sucks. And like everyone tells you, oh, that goes by so fast. And you're like, oh, no, it doesn't. They're only 3 or 4, they're 1. And
Right.
now they're 9, almost 9 and 7. And it's just like, it does go by fast. And unless you have these tough conversations with yourself and call yourself out on like, what am I making a priority right now and why, for what? And then working through that and like understanding that, yes, I'm doing this for them and their future and trying to give them the best possible life. But I'm here right now. Like,
Right.
and they are too. And this is what I get this time with them when they're this young. And like, I know we all
Mm.
got to work and we need a paycheck, and that's perfect, but it's all about, doing it for the right reasons. I feel like, and finding that balance of being able to be successful in your career and whatever that is to you, but also being successful under the roof of the family that you're trying to raise.
Amen. End the episode right there.
I didn't know I was going to cry again this episode, but I think I'm like 5 for 5 now, dude.
Secretly, that's why I bring you on. You're just press play. Hey, it's Jesse, and if you've been following this show, then you know I've had my fair share of struggles with alcohol. You also know that I built a pretty solid toolkit to help maintain a healthy relationship with alcohol. Things like fitness, mindfulness, accountability groups, and technology. All great, all helpful, but there's one tool I've recently found. It's called naltrexone, an FDA-approved, science-backed, and affordable medication that helps reduce cravings and control drinking. And that is where Or Health comes in. You can have doctor-prescribed naltrexone shipped directly to your door. No pharmacies, no doctor's offices, just the help you need. It's online, it's private, and it's judgment-free, and most importantly, it works. As of today, over 35,000 Or members have been treated, and 76% of respondents report drinking less in just 2 short weeks. So here's how to get started. Text STRENGTH to 710-710. That's STRENGTH to 710-710. It's easy, straightforward, and honestly might be the best move you make for yourself today. So if you're ready to take a massive step forward in controlling your alcohol intake, text STRENGTH to 710-710 and let Or Health help you redefine your relationship with alcohol.
Workaholism was a huge factor in my, I don't know if you want to call it downfall years ago, but a lot of the stress and anxiety that I held on to and didn't tell anybody about, a lot of it was coming from work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something that can be a good thing, like many other things in life, can very well be overdone and become controlling, and you depend on it. And then that's when things typically fall apart.
Yeah, and I think they also fall apart. I think the lie, like the great lie when it comes to work is so often we feel as though who we are as a person is defined by what we're able to
Mhm.
achieve in this jungle of a workplace, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And I think that's for me, that's where it all got so tangled, right? Because yeah, and actually I'll say this, like, so I think you know this, Justin, but I started finally consistently going to therapy.
Yeah, man. It's amazing.
Thanks, man. I think I just had my 5th straight. I'm doing the weekly method because I told the therapist, she's like, "Do you want to meet once a month or every other week?" And I said, "Whoa,
Nope.
whoa, we got a lot of catching up to do."
I got a lot you got to fix.
Yeah,
Come on.
let's schedule a weekend intensive and let's hit this thing like right now. I want to get caught up here. But I've learned a lot. I've been public with my story about this, and Justin, one of my best buds, this. But I mean, my job brought me to my knees. I
Yeah.
was completely a workaholic, and my entire identity was wrapped up in this thing. And a lot of times where it gets insidious and nasty is like we justify how much time we're committing to work
Yeah.
because there's honor in that, right? Like working
100%.
hard. I'm a dad. I'm providing. But really, in hindsight now, like so much of my habits around work were because of some insecurities and like a lack of kind of like self-worth that I was
Oh, yeah.
trying to fill that with accomplishment out in I don't know, I wasn't going to call it the jungle, but it makes sense to me, like out in
I
that
mean, no, I get
workplace,
it. Yeah.
right? So but in therapy, what my therapist, what she's helping me understand so much is when I think about and consider how I'm wired, but then also some of the dysfunction and trauma and issues I've had growing up, it's kind of this like concoction to
Yeah.
set you up for disaster, if that makes sense.
100% does, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, I know you relate.
But dude, it's like just thinking back to, when I was in the thick of it with work, and like there was much greater things going on with me than just wanting to get promoted and going into like, oh, I had to please every single person I ever came in contact with in order to feel any sort of self-validation. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, everything's on our phones now and everyone uses Slack and Teams and everything. So even if you shut your laptop, my phone will vibrate in 5 minutes because I got an email or a Slack. And it's just like, you have to almost force yourself to train against what you thought you knew about work in order to be able to make time for the things that matter, like family and your
Mm,
hobbies and health and interest. And it's so easy to get consumed in the 40-plus hour work week. And, the quote that I used to say all the time to my direct reports over the years, and now I have to stop saying because it's so messed up, is you spend more time with your coworkers than you do your families. So let's figure this out. Like, no, no,
ugly
like,
truth.
hold on. Whoa, whoa. Why are we for what? A paycheck that I'm not even going to get to use for what I want to? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
trying
man.
to rewire yourself, but a lot easier said than done.
It is. What matters most? I mean, you said it's basically like priorities. I think a good way to think about it is where do you spend most of your internal thoughts and monologue and
Yeah.
focus, right? Like if you just were standing in line waiting for something and you just had nothing to do and you didn't have your phone, what's like the first thing that pops in your mind? Are you ruminating? Are you worried about something with work? Is there something toxic or dysfunctional going on that's totally like preoccupying your mind and your emotions? I think that's the way to really do it. One things on that, just reacting to that definition, obsessive and obsessive compulsive. If anyone tracks or looks at your phone to see how often you pick it up, that's a great thing to look at.
Oh yeah.
I remember when I was at the height of my, and you use the term workaholicism. Man, I was checking my phone doing dishes at 8 p.m. I was checking my phone on the toilet. I was checking my phone at red lights. And every single time I'm just opening up Outlook, checking, opening up Outlook, checking. And man, talk about obsessive compulsive. It wasn't my plan and I was doing it anyway. That was a
Mhm.
key indicator for me. All right, man. So more, just kind of some stats here. I just want to kind of like talk through because I think it's important to kind of contemplate what is the prevalence of
Yeah.
actual workaholism as defined in the DSM-5. So I'm just gonna give you a quick quote, you being everybody, from the National Institute of Health. I always go to that quote. It's the NIH, if anyone doesn't know. So from the NIH, workaholism shares neurobiological patterns with addiction.
100%.
So that's fascinating to me. But specifically in how dopamine is triggered by work related stimuli. Here's some stats. So, if you're wondering the prevalence of work addiction, so 1 in 5 Americans are believed to have work addiction as defined in the DSM 5. There is a slightly higher prevalence in men versus women. This is interesting because 1 in 5, as I just said, actually are thought to have work addiction. But this is fascinating. 47% in a survey self identify as a workaholic, which means
Mhm.
a larger percentage of people say they're workaholic, but they're actually not by the definition.
Yeah.
Fascinating, right? Maybe there's a pride thing there, like I'm a
I guarantee you that's exactly
workaholic.
what I was just
Yeah.
going to say. That's an
Yeah.
ego stat.
Yeah, exactly. Good for you, as Christian Bale would say. And then here, this is interesting, and you already touched on this, Justin. 1 in 4 feel guilty for just working standard hours or just meeting expectations. I think that's massive. So, just some stats for you to all consider. But when you think about that first part there, that workaholism shares neurobiological patterns in how dopamine is triggered, what this is saying is that you are the type of person who is susceptible to developing addiction with alcohol or nicotine or gambling or pornography or whatever. You are also susceptible to workaholism, and also workaholism is often a comorbidity with
Yeah.
other types of addictions.
Oh yeah.
So when you think back when you were in the depths of work addiction or
Oh
the
yeah.
stress as a result of work, What else was happening in your life? Or what were you using?
No, I handled everything, I think, in the most healthy way possible. No, I'm
Yeah,
absolutely
bullshit,
kidding.
bullshit.
That binge drinking, alcohol.
Yeah, man.
Oof, that was, I mean, I think a lot of the listeners have heard my story over the years already too, but like when I was binge drinking, it was because I didn't want to feel the things that I was feeling, obviously. And a lot of the things that I was feeling were stress and anxiety. And a lot of that was self induced, mostly due to obviously current situations. A lot of those situations were mostly work related, and I catastrophized them or challenged myself and had to help myself to some standard that was impossible to achieve. So yeah, it was, how did I cope with that? It was absolutely alcoholism, trying to find ways to still be able to drink, even though I knew I shouldn't be. But I didn't want to lose that one little crutch that I knew throughout the years that was always there for me when I didn't want to be there for myself and feel anything. So that was a huge, huge factor in all of this. And the workaholism part, looking back now, obviously hindsight's 2020, but it's 1,000% tied hand in hand with addiction. Any kind of anything that I could have chased that made me feel good. I got promoted 4 years in a row at one point in my career as I was trying to climb the ladder to become into the management space. And I did, but at what cost? Because
Right.
throughout those years, it's just like, and Jess, there was even conversations you and I had, and I remember this conversation like it was yesterday, sitting in the parking lot of the train station at Westmont, getting ready to hop on the Paco to go into the city. I'm hysterically crying. Go figure, a hungover mess because I binged the night before,
Right.
not knowing what to do. In your exact words, where we got to get you the hell out of there, man.
Yeah, vicious. Yeah.
And then it wasn't shortly after that where I did get the hell out and I went to rehab. And thankfully, because I was lost it all before that, anything that makes you feel good, man, in my opinion, is something that can be idolized and turned into something that it shouldn't. And
Yeah.
how good that first promotion felt, all I
Yeah.
wanted was the next one, you
Yeah,
know?
and that's how you rationalize it, man. And that's the lie, right? It's like it feels great working hard, getting a promotion, being acknowledged, being affirmed is amazing. But then
Oh,
then
yeah.
you chase it and you chase it and you chase it, and then you take on the stress. I mean, let's face it, alcohol's and this is a controversial statement, but let's just be real here. Alcohol's like medicine, right?
100%.
It can be. Back to my therapist, she's getting to know me over these first five meetings, and she's understanding that I was using alcohol as self medication. And
Yeah.
she actually said, I mean, she's doing this for 30 years, and she has specializations in substance use disorder and stuff. She goes, "Look, Jess, like let's face it, it's really fucking good at turning your mind off, and literally, it's shutting off the prefrontal cortex, which is where all that discomfort, all the ruminating, all of the stress and anxiety, that's like your voice, your inner voice, and it mutes it. And when you turn to it, and this is certainly my story, but when you're feeling that stress, when you're chasing that promotion, maybe you have
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, insecurities, whatever it is, when you're doing that day in and day out, and then you got to flip the switch and be present, whether that's with a partner, spouse, family,
Yeah.
that takes time to wind down. But if you don't
Totally.
have the time and you turn to alcohol, what happens? It works. You do it again. Now your frequency goes up. Then you build tolerance, and then you're drinking stiffer, heavier stuff,
Yeah.
ridiculous triple, quadruple, freaking whatever IPAs, and then you find yourself in a dependence. Quickly, you're an addict. So again, like you might be wired to be susceptible to addiction, but then if you're focusing on and then you're using alcohol to cope with it, man, you're setting yourself up for sure.
Quickly, that downfall is going to come a lot quicker than anyone's ready for.
Look, for some reason, when it comes to mental health and recovery from alcohol misuse, people don't talk about supplements enough. When I decided to step away from alcohol and rebuild my health, I quickly learned that nutrition and supplementation weren't just optional, they're essential. That's why I choose Momentous supplements. Momentous invests heavily in NSF certification, meaning every batch of their products is tested for heavy metals, harmful additives, and label claim accuracy. You got to know what you're putting in your body. And that's why Momentous is trusted by all 32 professional NFL teams and D1 collegiate sports team dietitians across the country. What do I take? I take their protein and their creatine. Momentous protein is best in class for muscle repair and growth, while their CreaPure creatine, the purest form of creatine monohydrate, supports both physical strength and cognitive performance. These are foundational supplements that I continue to use to this day in my health journey for physical strength, mental fitness, and emotional resilience. Go to livemomentous.com and try it today at 20% off with code STRENGTH. That's livemomentous.com, 20% off with code STRENGTH, and start living on purpose today.
Man.
100%, man. 100%. I did some research I was trying to see how often does workaholism or maybe even a comorbidity with alcoholism together, right? How often can that specifically deteriorate marriage, right? And I looked up some interesting statistics around that. And by the way, for anyone wondering, there's this old saying that, hey, 50% of marriages result in a divorce. Not true. It's actually the divorce rate overall has been on a slow and gradual decline over the last 10
Let's
years.
go.
Yeah. And here's an interesting one for you, Justin. Of all professions, what professions or group professions have the highest divorce rate?
The highest divorce rate. I'm going to say doctors.
Interesting. Actually, one of the lowest, along with engineers.
Really?
Highest office and general administration, followed by business development.
Say,
So
okay,
if
I can see
you're
that.
in you're in sales, hey, pay attention. All right.
Watch yourself. Wear that ring.
We're cut back on the work trips and the
Yeah, you don't need
imbibing.
to go to that conference in LA next month, Paul.
Yep, yep. All right, man. So this is the last kind of like segment here we're going to talk about. So just helping the viewer, helping the listener, just kind of discern if you don't know already. Are you a workaholic? Do you have work addiction? So here's just a list of, I'll call it some signs or symptoms that can help you just figure out if you're struggling with this, if this conversation hasn't helped so far. So here's 4 signs that you could be addicted to work. Here's one. You feel guilty when you're not working, and we already talked about this, and you're not working, and you're only working regular hours. That's one. Number 2, you
Yeah.
struggle to relax or unplug, and you're constantly ruminating about work. I mean, what else can I say? Your relationships or health have suffered because of your job. And we already touched on this one. You are compulsively checking email, calling people, even during dinner, movies, or spending quality time with family members. So, what do you think, man? Guilty, 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 guilty?
That's the thing. Like, yeah, all of it is it's a gut check, man. And I think, having this conversation, it's super eye opening. I hope for people listening, but also for me too. And like, yeah, even for you too. Like, I know neither of us have everything figured out by any means. And a lot of this stuff is like, obviously what we've seen work for us or what hasn't worked for us. But I think continuing to challenge everyone, including ourselves, on these things and checking ourselves, because this is something that's in everyday life and left unchecked can be what causes a lot of people's downfall. So yeah, I wanted to stress that I don't have my shit fully together at all. And I don't want this episode to make it come off like I do, but I know what does and doesn't work for myself and my journey. And I hope some of the horrors that we had gone through in the past can to help, help people's futures be a lot prettier and brighter than what they feel like they currently are going to be.
Yeah. Amen. On a scale of 1 to 10 right now, if you're just kind of, maybe gauging your own addiction to work or maybe free from it, let's not assume that you are. Where are you at now? 1 to 10.
1 to 10 right now. Honestly, I would say I'm at a 5.
Okay. It's healthy.
I have done some self checks recently, not just this episode, but I was sharing with you, a lot of the getting into the habit of the, setting daily goals for myself, the journaling, devotional, like those small things that help me have a trickle down effect in my life in many different areas. So starting my day with that helps my perspective, which sucks a lot of the time when I immediately wake up. A lot of my first thoughts are this: I'm pissed off. And I hate that about myself. And I know I'm working on, I'm talking to so many people about it because I know it's something I need to work on. But like first thing when I wake up in the morning, 10 times out of 11, my back's going to be hurting. So it's like, that should not be the first thought in my head. So I'm working on getting God in my head before I get myself in there in the morning. And, trying to challenge myself with attainable small goals, because in the past, goals to me meant they had to be some first place medal and shiny achieving thing. But like, no, I want to cross off these 3 things off the list for work today. I'm going to do that. I want to spend 20 minutes of alone time with each of my kids today and take them fishing. I'm going to do that. And then I also want to end the night having a quiet talk with my wife, because we never get to understand half the thoughts going through each other's heads due to our schedule. So long story short, keeping my perspective in check and really understanding, what's important, and starting my days off like that, even when I don't want to, which is 9 times out of 10, has helped me kind of, reorganize the mess of thoughts going on in this big Polish brain.
Yeah, big boy. Yeah, man. I'll say this, and back to my therapist, which is great. She introduced me to this idea, and I might butcher this, but when it comes to habits, right, or addiction, there's phases that most of us fall into. Actually, all of us. There's pre-contemplation, contemplation, and action. Don't care if I mess that up, but I can work with this. But basically, I think step one, and what that basically means, pre-contemplation, you don't even know yet, or maybe
Yeah.
you're thinking you might have a problem. Contemplation is you're aware of it and you're thinking about making a change. Action is like, okay, I'm doing something.
Yeah.
You just described your action, which is keeping you fortified from falling back into those bad habits. I think the most important thing is to move and to be aware that you have a problem and get into that contemplation kind of like phase. And then once you're there, do some of those steps that you mentioned. And you could be like me, where, I mean, your career is everything and you're focused on it and it's unsalvageable and you just have to pull up. People take sabbaticals, people just stop and hit the reset button.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Highly recommend you don't do something crazy and sudden one day. We can talk about that in another episode, but I think, if I don't know that I could say any suggestions better than you just did, but if I can just pick one, maybe like takeaway for people to think about. And again, my therapist actually gave me this, and it's in the last 2 weeks, it's been really helpful for me. So let's just say that you had a hard day, and let's just say that your head's spinning, you're ruminating. Let's just say you have valid reason to be overwhelmed and stressed and maybe dysregulated, which is a great word to kind of bring into your vocabulary when you think about your mental health. Let's just say you're there. A lot of times we're there because we feel out of control, right? Maybe there's a work project that we're behind on and we just don't see a pathway to get it done on time. Maybe we're worried about getting fired. Maybe we're worried about a promotion. Maybe just like you're just overwhelmed and you're in that moment. What I've learned has been so helpful for me is what's so therapeutic is for me to control something. Like it literally feels good for me to do something that has instant gratification to kind of bring back that feeling of agency so it can reduce my stress. Because we know unhealthy alternatives, we can turn to booze and we know where that goes. We can turn to something like where we just turn off and we're just watching stupid YouTube videos, which is taking us away from the pain, but also our family. All that to say, perfect example for you, like what I did the other day, I said to my wife, and this goes back to being aware of it. I said, I'm really stressed right now. Say it. I'm really overwhelmed right now. That's step one. Step two is, and I'm going to go. And what I did the other day was my garage was a mess. I just had a bunch of birthdays, cardboard all over the place. My garage is like, if you want to know how Jesse's doing, if my garage is disheveled, I'm doing terrible.
I can
I
be
literally said,
same with me.
I said, Meg, if you're not on the same level I'm at right now, because if she's having a hard time, I don't want to put more on her plate, but like, can I just have 15 minutes? And I went out in the garage. I didn't bring my phone and I straightened up my garage like a freaking tornado. I went through, cut cardboard, put things away, all that stuff, right? Because that's just another thing in the back of my mind that feels chaotic. I went out there, straightened up my garage. Within 15 to 20 minutes, I'm staring at my garage and I'm like, this feels great. Yeah, dude. It was like just turning my mind off. And I went back inside. And even though none of the things that were stressing me out changed, I felt
You changed.
centered. And I think it was the time where I was just focusing on something, because to cut cardboard, you're focusing, you're taking your mind off it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then also I was like, hey, I just took one thing off my plate and it was enough for me to go inside and just, bath time, dinner time, clean up the whole deal.
Oh, yeah,
But it
man.
worked.
Yeah.
So takeaway, hopefully awareness, and hopefully this episode helped with that. Some kind of tips and tools Justin shared, I shared. That's the first step. But then if you feel like you're struggling with this or it's impacting your life and your relationships, move to that action phase. And maybe that's an honest conversation with your boss, your spouse, be honest, and just kind of move in a healthier place. And that's the takeaway that I would hope that people get.
Amen to that. I think that's the perfect way to sum it all up. I will end with a quote that I shared with Jesse that I've been writing down repeatedly and cementing into my large brain. And it's also been the thing that's kind of catapulted me into trying to be as consistent as possible with this daily stuff that I'm trying to do now. But the quote is, hell is full of men who said they would start tomorrow. And I think there's a lot of power to that. Hell is full of men who said they'd start tomorrow. Just that's all I'm going to say. Think on that and see how that can, apply to anything that you've been meandering over in your brain. I'll start it tomorrow, or I definitely, I know I needed to do this. I should do it, but maybe next week. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's do it.
Amen. Start today. Start today, folks. Thanks for joining us on Sober Strength, and we will see you next week. Live deep.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. That's the show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sober Strength podcast and spending some time with us today. We've got a favor to ask. If you enjoyed the show, would you please consider subscribing to the show and even leaving a rating and review? That simple act drastically helps us reach more people
and our mission to help them live better, longer, healthier lives. You can also follow us if you'd like on Instagram and YouTube for regular tips and motivation around mental health, addiction, and so much more. Know that your support fuels our brand and is greatly appreciated. So until next time, stay strong and live deep.